Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, as-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. We continue today the sessions on understanding Usul-ul-Fiqh. We are on page 102 in the section of Qiyas. Just to remind you what we were talking about. Last time we spoke about the various types of illah, the various types of reasons in the Sharia rules. So we spoke about that there are some rules which are known as tawqifiyya. They are rules without any reason. So the prohibition of pork, the prohibition of riba, the prohibition of khamr, they have no reason, they have no illah for them. But there are certain areas, and we spoke about which areas where illah can possibly exist in. These are the areas of muamalat and uqubat, punishments and transactions, and why is it possible to exist in there. And then we gave some examples, and we went through different types of illah. How does the scholar extract, or how does the scholar understand the illah from the text? So we went through the sarahat and the clear illah, when it is a clear-cut thing actually mentioned in the text, like the hadith which says about the private place, something becomes, the issue of permission is requested because of the site. Okay, in Ajal we went through that. We went through the implicit illah, maybe implicit there in the text. We went through the illah which is derived, which is extracted, and the illah which is through qiyas. So we went through the four types of illah last week. Now we're continuing the discussion here, 6.8, which is an important point, just to realize that what issues, again, which unfortunately today they are sometimes confused and they are taken as illah, they are taken for reasons, but they are not reasons at all. So there are two main areas today. One is the issue of maslahah, benefit or interest. So people have made, we're going through a discussion here, people have made maslahah the illah of the entire sharia. Okay, so they are saying that behind every single rule there must be a physical or tangible benefit. Okay, and they have made that as an illah, as if for every rule. So when you talk about sharia, but they'll say there is no benefit in that. What are you talking about? There is no benefit in that. They're trying to look for benefit as the basis or the reason for all the rules. And this is invalid completely. This is not a valid opinion at all. So we go through here that the valid illah is the shari'i illah that is mentioned in the text from the Quran and Sunnah. For these are the only two shari'i texts. Therefore the illah upon which the reason hukum shari'i is built is the shari'i illah and not rational. In other words, illah must be mentioned in the text either explicitly or implicitly, or through deduction or through qiyas. We mention again the concept of illah for clarity, that the illah is connected with the reason hukum in present and absent. Thus the rules revolve with their illah. So we find a thing is prohibited in a situation due to the existence of a shari'i illah, and the same thing is prohibited in a situation or it disappears when the illah disappears. So basically what we are explaining is that what is the meaning of illah? The meaning of illah is that the rule is based upon a reason. If the reason is absent, then the rule is absent. The rule is connected with the reason in its existence and in its absence. So what do we give examples before? For example, the judge should not judge when he is angry. Why? Because it performs his judgment. This is the illah of the rule. So if the judge, his mind is not performed, then he can judge. So the prohibition, i.e. the prohibition of judging when he is in a state of befoggment of the mind or the affecting of the mind, that prohibition is lifted when the illah ceases to exist, isn't it? So similarly, for example, we discussed at the time of Jum'ah, any type of activity, whether it's trade or any other contract or anything else, is prohibited normally because it would distract you from the salah. Okay? So now, when the time of Jum'ah is passed, the illah ceases to exist, you can carry on. The illah, the whole meaning of the illah, it is the reason behind the rule. So the prohibition of trade at the time of Jum'ah is why? Because it keeps you away from the salah. So now when Jum'ah is gone, the illah ceases. Okay, so now let's look. If we were to attach maslahah, if we were to attach benefit or physical interest or material interest as the illah for the sharia, what will happen? We will end up abandoning most of the sharia when the benefit ceases to exist. Okay, so for example, if we were to say fasting is good for your health, isn't it? If somebody, and some people do that, if they say fasting, it's prescribed by Allah because, illah here again, because it is good for your health. Saying so fasting is not good for your health. Then you would leave fasting. Say so now, for me, I do a scientific test, fasting is not good for my metabolism. But still, by Shara, I have to fast. And the rukhsa, the permission of not to fast, is only if it's something that is, you are ill or harmful to you directly. But say so, it is something not beneficial for you. Okay, it's not good for your metabolism. Then I would say, oh, forget fasting. That's the meaning if you make the illah as a material benefit. But that's a very dangerous thing. And that would lead to the abandonment of the Sharia, and therefore it's not acceptable at all. Because there is no dalil to indicate that maslahah, material interest, are the illah for the Sharia. In fact, there are texts opposite to that. The text of the Quran and Sunnah indicate that the Sharia rules are in fact many times against our benefit. Isn't it? كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالِ, fighting is prescribed for you, though you hate it. Yeah? Meaning you don't like it, because you fear you're going to die. Isn't it? For example, the hukum of qital is that against your material interest, you will go in the battlefield and be killed. How is that for your benefit? It's not for your benefit. So it may be a thing that you hate, but it is good for you, meaning it is good for you in the knowledge of Allah in the akhirah. There may be something you love, but it is bad for you. Allah knows, you know not. Meaning mankind does not know and cannot determine the reason behind the rules based upon what he loves and what he hates, what he benefits him and what harms him. That is not ta'illah. So we mention here, we go back to the text of the book here, the relationship of the rule with the illah in existence and in absence does not mean that the rules change due to the change of time and place. Thus claiming the bringing about the benefit and preventing the corruption is the illah of hukum shari, which changes as the time and place change. So the hukum shari changes accordingly, it's false. This is because bringing about the benefit and preventing the harm are not at all the illah for the ahkam. Some people, they use the same argument, say bringing about benefit and keeping away from mafsada, corruption, harm, is the illah for the Sharia, and therefore they say this is how the Sharia adapts to the new situation. So because we are facing new situation, the reason is what we follow. Follow the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. Yeah, so the modernist camp, all these modernist scholars who attempt to change the Sharia, they're saying, look, see that we look at the spirit of the law. So if we follow the spirit of the law, we will say that democracy is allowed. If we follow the spirit of the law, we will say that an individual who is poor, he can take a loan with riba, because the spirit of the law is the maslahah, is the benefit of the Muslim community. If we follow the spirit of the law, when you are at the workplace and it's difficult to pray salah, you can combine the salah, because it is difficult for you to pray. Okay? These are the modernist camp, and all these opinions are batil. They have no validity at all. They are not only batil, they are munkar. They are things which are in fact evil. They are promoting the abandonment of the Sharia upon the basis of changing Islam for the time and the place. Now, the application of the illah and qiyas does not mean the changing of Islam. Islam does not change. It means the application of Islam. Right? The time and the place, whatever time and place we are in, is irrelevant. What we need to look at is the ahkam sharia. If there is an illah, then we apply the illah, as we have discussed last time, and qiyas can be made, but that is an extraction of the rule from Islam, not the changing of Islam. Okay, and because Islam does not change, and there is no benefit as the illah. In fact, if we look at so many ayat of Quran, Allah mentioned, for example, do you think you will enter Jannah without being tried and tested as the people before you? They were tried and tested. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ad-dunya sijn al-mu'min wa jannatul kafir." The dunya is the prison for the believer. Meaning it's not that we live in a paradise for the disbeliever, the kafir. Because they act as they please. They act according to their whims and desires and benefit and maslahah. Whereas we act according to the prison of the Sharia. We cannot just do what we want or what we see as beneficial. We follow whatever the Sharia says for us. That's why we're in a prison. That's why life is a test. Okay? So there is no benefit. The benefit is not the illah. They try to manipulate certain verses we have mentioned before. They try to use the verse, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. They use this verse to say, Allah has sent Rasul as a rahmah, as a mercy for mankind. If he is a mercy for mankind, that means the Sharia should be beneficial for mankind. Now, it's true, the Sharia is a mercy for mankind, but the maslahah is in the akhirah, not the maslahah of the dunya. This is the problem. The benefit of Islam is in akhirah, i.e., how does it benefit you to pray 5 times salah a day, physically? The maslahah is in akhirah, that you will get reward. How does it benefit you for fasting in Ramadan. The maslaha, meaning the interest or the benefit, is in akhirah, meaning ajr. You get reward, you get, the scale of good deeds on Yawm al-Qiyamah will be increased. Therefore, this will aid you in the afterlife. And therefore, that's what the true maslaha is. The maslaha in the dunya is not the intention, it's not the law, it's not the illah for the sharia. Okay? And therefore, the sharia has come as a test. In some rules, if there are reasons, fine. In other rules, there are no reasons. That's it. You do not invent a reason for them, and there is no basis for that. So that argument is false. Okay, we continue here about the issue of corruption. Okay, then the next page, page 104, we mention about customs and tradition. Some people, this is another corruption in the modern age. Some people, they try to say the illah or the reason why certain rules are in Islam is because this was the custom of the Arabs. Okay, so they say that the Sharia is based upon custom, it's based upon urf, tradition. Therefore, as traditions change, the Sharia changes. Okay, so for example, in the Sudanese constitution, they say that the source of law of Sudan is the Quran and Sunnah and the Sudanese custom and the Sudanese tradition. So, they are making the tradition of the people as a source of law. Okay, so what these people they try to do is they give certain rules. For example, the tawaf around the Kaaba, it was a pre-existing law already. It was a law that existed, or it was part of the religious rites of Quraysh. It was from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. They used to make tawaf around the Kaaba. So they say, see, in Islam, in Hajj, you make tawaf around the Kaaba. See, therefore the illah of the Sharia is the tradition. It's a traditional law, and therefore Islam has just come to adopt that. For example, similar thing, marrying more than one wife. They say this was the tradition of the Arabs. Therefore, the Prophet, as part of that, he just followed that tradition, therefore in Islam. But because the tradition has changed in the world today, therefore that law is not applicable. Okay, so therefore you can only have one wife, because the tradition ceases to exist. Other things, so they give many issues. They say the custom of the women of the time was to wear those loose-fitting garments, the abayya, etc. And today the reality has changed, and therefore the custom. So again here what they are doing is they're trying to link the Sharia to custom. Okay, and it was the custom of the time, and therefore the custom of the time, many of the hudud laws there as well. They say, for example, the jinayat, the blood money, diya. Blood money was a custom of Quraysh. Okay, if you kill someone, you have to pay unintentionally. You have to pay diya, even in the Quraysh, even before Islam. So therefore, they say Islam has just came and adopted those same rules. And therefore, the illah of the Sharia is the custom and the tradition. Now, again here, this is false. We will just read here, it says, as to the change of the tradition and customs of the people, this does not have an effect in changing of the rules. But the tradition is not the illah of the Sharia, no source for it. The tradition may agree or disagree with the Sharia. If they agree with the Shara, then the Shara has come to abrogate and change them, okay? Sorry, if they disagree. Since the function of the Shara is to change the corrupted traditions and customs because they are the factors that cause corruption of the society. Therefore, they are not taken as a source for the Hukum Shara and no an illah for it. So we're simply explaining here that if something contradicts the Shara, okay, for example in Jahiliyyah, if you owed a debt, in Jahiliyyah is a pre-Islamic or pre-Islamic age, if you owed somebody a debt, you could not pay it, you would become their slave. Okay, that's slave or form of slavery. Islam came to abrogate that. Okay, Rasul said it's haram to make a free man a slave. Okay, so now Islam has come to nullify that. Okay, so anything which contradicts Islam, okay, was nullified. Now, just because certain things pre-existed before Islam, okay, for example, vegetables are halal in all religions, or apart from maybe some ways Jains or something, maybe they prohibit some type of vegetable, but in pre-Islam, vegetables are allowed. Just because Islam says it's allowed, doesn't mean the reason why Islam has made vegetables halal is because it existed before Islam. In the tradition, that is not the reason. That's just because Allah has made it halal in our Sharia. Okay? Not because they had it halal in their Sharia. That's irrelevant. Whatever they had in their Sharia, whatever they had in their custom is irrelevant. the Sharia of Islam is absolute. The Sharia of Islam is what we follow, not what they used to follow. There was no reason behind that. So, some things may match, some things may not match. So yes, they were allowed to marry more than one wife. For example, in Jahiliyyah, people had 10 wives. Now Islam abrogated that. Islam only allowed to have 4 wives. So it stopped that. Okay? That's because Allah has decided it. Yeah? So there is a qaida, there is a principle, it's an important principle here, that I will mention it a few times so it sinks into your mind. Whatever agrees with Islam is kufr. And whatever disagrees with Islam is kufr. Okay, now I'll mention it again because at the first glance it does not sound correct. Okay, whatever agrees with Islam is kufr. Let me explain. The fact that Jews, they do not eat pork, it's in their religion. Pork is haram in their religion. But that is still kufr. Because their religion is Judaism, it's not Islam. Whatever disagrees with Islam is kufr, of course. Meaning the basis should be Islam. The basis should be Islam. So when we do not eat pork, we do not eat pork because it's in the Torah. We don't eat pork because it's haram in our Sharia. You see the point? It's not about agreement or disagreement with the other religions. That's irrelevant. The Sharia of Islam is supreme and that's what we follow. Okay, it's not what the custom and the tradition and the previous religions and whatever. That is irrelevant, all of that. That the Sharia of Islam is what we follow. So therefore, anything agreeing with Islam as well doesn't mean it's Islamic. So there is a corrupt principle invented by a modernist scholar. He appeared in the 1700s. His name was Jamaluddin Afghani. He is respected in the subcontinent. And his student was Muhammad Abdu, who became the Grand Mufti of Egypt. He was the Sheikh al-Azhar of Egypt, appointed by the British when the British took over Egypt. They had a principle. They said this: Islam is good. Whatever is good is Islamic. Okay? So now, that sounds correct at the first glance. So the first part of the statement is correct. Islam is good. Okay, that's true. Now what they open the door now. Whatever is good is Islamic. Now who defines the whatever? They are saying the mind. So from that principle they say that look, democracy is good, ruling by a parliamentary system is good, this is good, and therefore it is Islamic. Can you see the point? They are inventing from the mind here. So that's incorrect. The correct principle is whatever agrees with Islam is kufr, whatever disagrees with Islam is kufr. Meaning the basis must be Islam. The reason why we do something or not do something is because it says in the Kitab and Sunnah, or it's indicated by the Kitab and Sunnah. Okay, that's why. Not because it's a custom, not because it's a tradition. Yes.
What agrees with Islam is kufr.
Yes.
I believe that statement, it's a rule or...
It's a qaida, it's a principle which is extracted from looking at the Sharia evidence. Meaning, just because something agrees with Islam, if its basis is not Islam, therefore it's disbelief. I'll give you an example, or it emanates from disbelief. Some people will choose to fast in the month of Ramadan for a moral purpose. Christians also, I want to feel, let's have interfaith brotherhood. I will fast in the month of Ramadan because I want to feel how poor people feel. Okay? Now, for that fast, will they get ajr? Will they get reward from Allah? No. Because the reason they are doing it is not as a worship to Allah. They are not doing it because they believe in Islam and is obligated by the Sharia, and they are doing it as a worship. So therefore it's in vain. The fast is in vain. It's kufr. It's rejected. Okay? So we have to realize that anything which may agree with Islam also. For example, in one part of democracy is sovereignty to the people and authority to the people. Sovereignty to the people is kufr. We know it contradicts Islam. In Islam, sovereignty is for Allah. Allah decides the rules and laws, not human beings. But the element of authority to the people, i.e. that in democracy you have election, okay, that you are allowed to elect a ruler. In Islam also you elect the Amir, you elect the Khalifa. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was elected, so there is an election. Just because Islam allows election and democracy allows election does not mean Islam is democracy. That's what people are doing today. They are looking at the similarity between Islam and another religion and saying, okay, Islam has come to, it's the same as that. Now of course Slightly different with the issue of urf. They did the same thing about tradition of Quraysh. So they say Quraysh has this tradition, Islam came and it was similar to it, so therefore Islam is based on that tradition. That is false. Islam is not based on the tradition. Islam is based on wahi, the revelation of Allah. Right? Yes. 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 Yeah, that's right. If a non-Muslim gives their wealth for sadaqah, for charity, for people, fine. It may seem that it's a good deed, but the issue is that in principle, because they're not doing it for a correct reason, okay, then it's not something that's going to benefit them in the akhirah. The basis by which they're doing it is not Islamic. They're doing it for some other reason, morality or something, or their own ideas. For the action to be sahih, it must be based upon Islam. That means it must originate from Islam. Okay? Not from tradition, not from custom, not from benefit, not from the mind, not from a comparative reason from another religion. It must come from what we believe is the wahi from Allah, i.e. it's a revelation from the Lord of the world. He has revealed it for us to do, and therefore we do it. Yeah? So therefore customs and traditions, that element we should be careful. They have nothing to do with the subject of Allah. Yes.
What agrees with Islam? When it says in the statement is said,
yes,
agrees with Islam. So agreeing whatever is excluding Islam, and Islam is isolated.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So having said that, what is this Islam? Who brought this Islam to us?
No, what they're talking about is the agreement with Islam. They are talking about the rules here, not the basis of the rules. So they're saying that Judaism, pork is haram. So that agrees with Islam.
No, my question is,
yes,
when you say Islam,
yes,
I mean, who brought Islam out?
Yeah, of course. That's
so
when we want to break the idea, Islam is from Allah, and therefore Islam defines for us how to act, and Islam defines for us what is good and what is bad. Islam defines for us the Sharia, and therefore we can't just invent the Sharia from the mind and say, oh, this agrees with Islam, we will call it Islamic. That is of course something that contradicts the whole principle. Like Rasulullah said, "Kullu amalin laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad." Anything or any action, any amal that contradicts with what I have brought, it is rejected. Okay, the basis for what we do is based upon the Kitab and the Sunnah. He said there are two things, if you stick to them you will never go astray, the Kitab of Allah and the Sunnah, my Sunnah. So those are the foundation of the deen, and those are the foundation of the wahi, of the revelation. So that should be the basis for the entire Sharia, not the mind. Okay? And so the mind, with the people influenced more by Greek philosophy and these ideas in history, they put overemphasis upon the mind. Okay, so they try to give the issue of that we can see. So for example, the Mu'tazila, they were a school of thought, or they were a group that came about in history, and they adopted many thoughts from the Greeks. So they said, okay, we take the Sharia, but we can see why the Sharia has made something halal and haram. So they said the Sharia is the basis, but the mind is an evidence for it. So they would say pork is haram because it's bad for you. They would say, you're allowed to marry more than one, a man can marry more than one because of this and because of that, because of this. They would invent the reason from the mind. And their ideas are false. That was because of the influence of philosophy. Okay, it was not something based upon dalil. Okay, and therefore it's false. Only the Sharia alone can be taken, not the mind with an evidence for it. Yes.
So this argument itself stands meaningless because Islam is complete and this is Sharia which is given by Quran. So
yes,
when things are given in Quran, why don't people take it from neither they go for the external things which existed there,
yeah,
and they want to put it across with the Sharia, comparing things with the Sharia.
Yeah.
We have the real original source.
yes.
We have to take it from that. We cannot compare the.
But they apply these principles in areas where the Sharia has not directly discussed the matter. For example, they will discuss the areas which are new things that occur in the world. So they will say democracy is a new thing, DLC company structure is a new thing. It did not exist at the time of Rasulullah. Therefore, if we can see some goodness in it, therefore we can make it Islamic.
No, only
yes,
regarding the customs.
Yes.
Can you give me the example of what new thing they saw and based on which they have to go?
No. When it comes to custom, they don't invent new things, they nullify the Sharia because of the absence of the custom. So for example, they say women's clothing was because of the custom of the clothing in Arabia. They say that marrying multiple marriage, polygyny, having more than one wife for the man, was the custom in Arabia. Therefore the custom in the world has changed, therefore those rules are not applicable anymore.
So they are taking the license from the Sharia and want to make the tradition customs...
yeah, they are making the custom the reason, and therefore when the custom changes, you just abolish the rule. Okay? So that is the danger. Of course, this is an invalid argument. It's not something which is valid today. It's not something based on any dalil. It's just an invention. Okay, that we don't follow. There is no customs or irrelevant. Islam came to change the custom. Islam came to change the society, not based upon whatever the society is following already. Okay, come to make people worship Allah and liberate them from worshipping one another. That's the whole purpose of Islam. So actually it's a false argument. Okay? Any other questions about that we discussed so far?
And another question regarding
yes.
Rasulullah marriage. So when did the hukum of marrying 4 wives came into picture?
Most of the Sharia came in Medina, okay. Even before the Ahkam. For example, Umar radiallahu anhu, he had 2 wives who were mushriks, who were idol worshippers. They were not Muslims. So then Allah revealed in the Quran the Ahkam of marriage, that man cannot be married to mushriks. Then Umar left 2 of his wives, and then Allah mentioned the man can marry 1, 2, or 3 or 4. But for the Prophet, we discussed in the section of Sunnah, he had a specific rule only for him, which is not for us, that he could marry more than 4. Yes.
Is there any specification where Allah says the rule of marrying 4 women is not for Rasulullah?
Allah did not say that, the Prophet said that. So Allah said, I marry more than 4, or the Prophet prohibited the Sahaba marrying more than 4. Okay, so that is specified in the Sunnah. Okay, so we discussed in the section of Sunnah that there are certain things like the Prophet said, the Prophet fasted more, he used to fast not in Ramadan but in the normal days, sometimes continuous without breaking his fast after Maghrib. Whereas for a Muslim it's haram. You can't fast continuously for 3 days without eating. But for the Prophet it was allowed. For the Prophet tahajjud was wajib, for us it is not. So many things, most of these things were clarified in the Sunnah. Yes, yes. 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 No, that's something which is not understanding the root of the issue. The issue is this, that we look to Islam for the principle of allowing us the use of technology or something, or not the use of something. So, for example, in Islam has allowed us, when it comes to Madaniyah, when it comes to technological things, barring few things, like there is a principle in Usul-ul-Fiqh, al-asal fil ashya al-ibaha, the principle related to things is that in general they are permitted, barring a list of prohibited things. So pork, dead meat which is not slaughtered in the name of Allah, all those very few things, khamar, these are prohibited things. Other than that, Allah said, ma fil ardi jami'an, Allah has made the earth as an expanse for you, eat out of the earth. There are so many ayat that the earth is for our utilization. So when it comes to things, technology, a laptop is not it's a generic item, it's not linked to a religion. Okay, so a generic item which is not linked to a religion can be used by us. So Rasulullah ﷺ in the battle of the ditch, the battle of what is called Ahzab or Khandaq, used the trench, which is a style of warfare from the Romans. Okay, he used a catapult in one battle, from the Persians. He used a catapult which was from the Romans. He used swords which were from the Yemenis, who were not Muslim at that time. So technology, there are 2 types of physical things. If a physical thing is linked to somebody's religion, like the cross, then it's prohibited, because Rasulullah ﷺ said, whoever imitates the people is one of them. And here it means imitating them in their religion. So for us to wear a saffron robe, it's haram, because this is the robe of the Hindus. For us to wear the skull cap of the Jews, it's haram, because it is something related to their religion. For us to wear the symbol of the Christians, this is symbols to do with their religion, but they are physical objects. Other than that, any technology, the technology is halal unless it's within a prohibited list, which is very limited. It depends upon what you use the technology for. So the laptop or the computer or the knife or the sword or the gun or the nuclear weapon can be used for halal or haram. So the issue which we need to look to is the action, not the thing. How does the Sharia tell us to do our action? So for example, dawah is halal, it's obligation. Therefore to use a laptop to do dawah, to use the internet to do dawah is halal. Because the thing in origin is halal. Okay? So we are not saying that anything from the non-Muslims, we should reject it. That is a misnomer. If a non-Muslim develops something, we look to the rules within Islam regarding that thing. And most of the things developed by the non-Muslims, they fall within the generic category, i.e. they are not linked to a religion. Therefore we can take it as irrelevant whether a Muslim or non-Muslim invented a computer. That doesn't matter. What matters is the computer halal or haram? Yes, computer is halal, so we can use it. Whoever developed it is not. And also when it comes to Madaniyah and technological things, we have a clear hadith. Rasulullah ﷺ has said, you know better in your affairs. This occurred in a technological issue where Rasulullah ﷺ was crossed with the Sahaba at his time. We mentioned it in the section of Sunnah. They were cross-pollinating the date palm. They used to artificially pollinate the date palm. And the Prophet saw them doing that, and he thought they are doing some nonsensical practice. So he said, why are you doing this? And stop doing that. So the Sahaba in Medina, they stopped doing it. And that year the yield of dates, i.e. the production of dates, decreased. And the Prophet asked them about that. They said, you told us to stop doing that. He said, I did not mean, this. He said that in your affairs, you know better. I am a man like you. So the meaning of this hadith is in technological matters. The Prophet is saying that in technological things, we study the reality of something. Islam does not teach you about how to build a computer. We look to the reality to understand computing. Islam will govern whether to study computing is halal. Or we look to the Sharia, yes, it's halal, then we look to the reality to understand it. Yeah? So we don't look for a dalil from Quran to tell you how does a microprocessor work. We will look to the waqi', the reality. You will look to the Quran or the Sunnah to see whether it's allowed to go into that field in the first place. Yeah, or like technology or the utilization of that. Is it allowed to use that now? Is it allowed to use the internet to spy upon people? No, it's haram because spying upon people is haram. But it's allowed to use the internet for halal things. Right? So, Islam governs actions. Actually, we study it later on when we go deeper in Usul. That Islam governs actions. Things are generic. The things in principle are permitted. And what Islam governs is action. So, for example, any haram action, to use anything which is halal to do the haram action now is haram. So, for example, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, and do not approach zina. So for me to chat up a girl through MSN Messenger, now it's haram. To using the internet, because chatting up a girl is haram in the first place. You see the issue? So using anything, using MSN is halal, but using anything to achieve the haram action is haram. Now, using any action which is halal, nikah is halal. So to use the internet to have nikah is halal. Because nikah is halal. So for me to ask, for a woman, do you accept Riyaz in marriage? He is proposed to you, and she says, yes, the marriage is done if we have witnesses. Because it's the thing, but the thing what we are doing, the action we are doing is halal.
Some scholars understand this issue, therefore they start, planning TV management and without understanding the reality. They say, it will lead to haram. You may watch the news, you may be doing haram, but then you can't keep it.
No, that is a different argument. That is a different argument. We will study Usul later on. They use principles, for example, the principle known as Sadd al-Zara'i, the blocking of the means to haram, or Ma'alatul Afal, the consequences of action. These principles are weak, They are not strong principles to prohibit something. For example, they say TV may lead you to haram. May. So we'll study that later on. The possibility of haram is not enough to say something, to block the thing to be haram. It should be Wasilatul haram ila al-haram. The means to haram is haram. Whatever will lead you to haram definitely is haram. Or whatever will lead you to haram by least amount of doubt. By ghalabatul zan, what they call it. By least amount of doubt. It will lead you to haram. So for example, if something, may lead you to haram, it's not enough. We can say, and that's why some people say, the woman, she should cover her face. Why? A man may get excited. But the Rasul ﷺ did not enforce that upon the women. The Rasul ﷺ in an authentic hadith was once dealing with a woman. Obviously her face was uncovered. One of the Sahaba, Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, he was looking at the woman, and because she was beautiful, he kept looking at her. So what did the Prophet do? The Prophet held his face and moved it. So the Prophet didn't tell the woman to cover her face. Okay, the issue is that yes, it can lead to, somebody can get within a halal, from doing something halal, a woman, her face is allowed to be uncovered, but he can have wrong intention. So he is doing haram, not the woman. He held his face and moved it. Okay, so I is correcting him and he calmed down, telling him to calm down. Yeah, so the issue is that this is a later discussion in Usul. That the consequence, in fact, it's a valid argument. It's weak. Okay, the issue of sadd al-dara'i, the blocking of the means, or ma'latul afal, they are weak qawaid, they are weak principles. It doesn't mean they are invalid. The scholars who use them, they have a shubha dalil, they have a basis in evidence, what we call a semblance of an evidence. So if they use those arguments to prohibit something, we don't say it's munkar. We don't say they view that it is munkar. So the scholars who say because of that TV is haram, it's not munkar, it's not an completely invalid opinion. We say it's a weak opinion. It's valid, okay, but it is weak. Right? So this is the issue. But some scholars prohibit the TV not because of that, they prohibited that. It's a more relevant discussion because it is new. So they say that it is something new and it's not mentioned in Kitab and Sunnah directly, therefore it's haram. That's wrong. Because that argument is not valid as an argument. Just because something is new doesn't mean it's haram. Okay? The issue must be, we must look for the dalil. If something has a dalil that allows it, then it is allowed. Yes. No, they say everything. They do not distinguish between halal and madaniyah. So that's what they were saying. So within the Uthmani Khilafah, in the last period of the Ottoman state, there was a massive debate within the ulama and within the intelligentsia about these issues. The traditionalists said anything from the West is haram. So they said TV is not invalid. Telephone is haram. Printing the Quran is haram. Anything is haram from the West. That was wrong, obviously, that they did not have ijtihadi mentality. They did not understand usul. Then the other camp, they said everything. They could not distinguish between the telephone and democracy, between the PLC company structure and a printing press. They mixed it all together into one. Said whatever comes from the West, that is good. It's halal. Okay, so both of them are wrong. Both of the camps are wrong. That's the decline in understanding usul. They could not distinguish what can we take and what we cannot take. To be able to distinguish, we need to understand the principle. We need to understand what is the
rule applies, whatever is agreed with.
Yeah, again, we have to see that if something is allowed by Islam, like a telephone, it's just technology, it's madaniyah, it's nothing linked to a religion, it's allowed. Okay, so then Islam allows it. It is not allowed by the mere fact that it is new. It is allowed because the hakim, the sovereign, the master, Allah has allowed things in general. That's why we allow it. Not because it is a new thing. So what people did, they mistake is just because something is new, it is allowed. No. Because Allah has permitted things makes it allowed. Not because it's a new thing. Right? So that we have to be careful in that. Yeah. For example, pornography, it is a new thing, but it's haram. Okay, just because it is new doesn't mean it is halal. Because it is, it's promoting zina, it is haram. Yeah. Okay, let's get back to the discussion of Illa. The next point
So,
There were multiple things in the discussion which we were having. The first part of the discussion was about maslaha, benefit as a illah of the Sharia, which we refuted. The second part was tradition as a illah. There are two different arguments. There are two different points. The issue of tradition is used to nullify the Sharia. So they say that, look, for you to wear scarf, don't need to, that's an old thing. The people at the time of the Prophet used to dress like that in Medina. Okay, therefore you don't need to wear it in the modern age. That's a traditional thing, therefore the illah does not apply anymore, therefore you don't need to wear it. Okay, so they nullify the Sharia by that. The others, they invent new things into the Sharia by the issue of maslaha. Okay, and they nullify also. So they say that, look, today Islam is supposed to be for the benefit of humanity. And they use all those hadiths. Rasulullah ﷺ said Islam is about ease, not difficulty. Now the Prophet was talking about what? He was talking about within the mubah, within the permitted things, not within halal and haram. Obviously, Islam is not just about ease. Otherwise Allah would have just said in the Quran, okay, follow whatever is easy for you. There would be no point of the Sharia. There would no fasting. Is it easy? It's difficult. In the hot summer day of 50 degrees in Al-Hijaz, imagine the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. Okay, with no AC, with no thing. Fasting is very difficult. Islam is not about ease. So what the Prophet means here, Islam is about ease, or choose the easier path, is within the halal. I don't make things complicated for yourself. Within the halal things, you do the halal. Whatever is easy for you, and you don't make things unnecessarily difficult. Okay? So if something, for example, when Rasulullah gave the rukhsa, when you are traveling, it's allowed to break your fast. So now, if you are traveling in a long distance and it's very difficult for you, then you can break the fast. There is no need to, continue fasting because it's halal. So you choose the easier path within the mubah, within the permitted time. So these are the issues. Right? Okay, we'll continue upon page 104 with section 6.9. The difference between manat al-hukm, the reality of the rule, and illah. It would be wrong to say that manat al-hukm is the reason behind the hukm, illah al-hukm. This cannot be said because the subject, manat of the verdict, is different from the reason, the illah of the verdict. In fact, there is a big difference between the subject and the reason. The illah is what induces the verdict to be initiated, i.e. it is the thing that indicates the intention of the legislator behind the verdict. This is without any doubt requires a Sharia evidence to indicate it clearly so that it is understood that it is the intention of the legislator for initiating the verdict. As for the subject of the verdict, this is the subject upon which the verdict applies or to which the verdict is related. In other words, it is the issue which the verdict conforms to and not its evidence nor its reason. It therefore follows that the manat, the reality, is the thing which the verdict is attached to, i.e. the verdict is brought to deal with it or to solve it. It is incorrect to say that the verdict is brought because of it, so as to say that the illah behind the verdict. What are we saying here? We are saying that look, there is a difference between manat al-hukm, the reality of the rule, and the illah, the reason of a rule. The reality of the rule, as we mentioned, is the non-textual aspect of the Sharia verdict. Okay, and to comprehend the reality of the rule, you don't need to be a mujtahid. Okay, you don't need to be a scholar. The reality of the rule is simply to understand what its manat is. For example, Allah has prohibited khamr, intoxication or intoxicant. So for me to study marijuana, or for me to study heroin, and for me to study opium and to understand whether it intoxicates the mind or not, it's simply identifying the reality, whether it fits khamr or not. It's not the illah, it's not the reason for the rule. It's simply identification of the reality and application of the hukm on the reality. So for me to say khamr is haram is a textual matter. For me to say heroin is haram because it is khamr. Okay? That is, you don't need a mujtahid to apply the hukm to the reality. It's not ijtihad. Okay? It's simply application of hukm upon the manat. For example, praying towards Qibla. Now Qibla is a direction. For me to identify the direction, it's a reality. Qibla is a reality. And for me to identify the reality, it's identifying the reality. That's nothing to do with Allah. We are not praying. That's why the mushriks, they become confused. They say, you are praying towards the Kaaba, we are praying towards our idol. You are praying towards the idol, why? Because you are worshipping it. Or you are worshipping a deity which the idol represents. We are praying towards the Kaaba, why? Not because it benefits us, not because of any illah. It's because Allah Azza wa Jalla has made that the direction of prayer. That's it. So Umar radiallahu anhu, for example, when he kissed the black stone in the Kaaba, you know, the Hajar Aswad, the black stone, he kissed it, and before kissing it, he said, I am only kissing you because I have seen the Messenger of Allah kiss you. Not because you can harm me or benefit me in any way. Meaning, you are just a stone. You only kiss the stone because it's a ritual. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did that, and that's why we do it. Not because it is going to benefit or harm us in any way. Okay? So the Kaaba, we should not confuse. We pray towards the Kaaba not because there's illah. Not because it's something which we are worshipping the Kaaba in any way or anything like that. Because the Kaaba is just a direction. It's simply a direction of prayer. Allah first made the direction as Al-Aqsa in the Quran. Then that was changed to the Kaaba. Why was it changed? That is the knowledge of Allah. Allah has changed it. In fact, when Allah changed it, it became a massive controversy amongst the Quraysh. They started to attack Islam. See, your deen is changing. You were praying towards Al-Aqsa, now you're praying towards Kaaba. Look at that. Okay? So they're trying to mock the deen. But that's because we follow the legislature. We do not follow our mind. Okay? So here Allah revealed about that. So we have to understand that Manatul Hukum, the reality of the rule, is not the same as Illah rule. We give some other examples. We give examples here. The example of what is known as the mutlaq water, what type of water can you make wudu in? Wudu, we know, can be made in water which is not stagnant, water which is not just in a place where there can be najasa in that, and it is stagnant. Water must be flowing. For example, it is mutlaq, absolute water. So when we understand the hukum, and then we study the type of water and we apply the hukum to the reality, this is nothing to do with qiyas. Some people confuse, oh, this is Qiyas, you applying the illah. No, it's simple. You don't even need to be mujtahid. This is a type of what we call ijtihad linguistically, but it's the identification of the reality and applying the rule to the reality. So you don't need to be mujtahid for that, and it is not Qiyas at all. It's simply application of the hukum upon the reality. Okay? So we have to understand that what we call the reality of the rule. Yes.
This topic difference between Manatul Hukum, what's the objective of this topic?
Illah and Qiyas is different to the subject of Manatul Hukum and the application of rule to the reality. Manatul Hukum is about the reality of the subject. Okay, Illah Hukum is the reason behind what Allah has revealed. Okay, so there are two different subjects, meaning we should not mix them and create confusion. Okay, so for example, some people proclaim themselves as mujtahids by thinking, oh look, see, I can identify something as an intoxicant and therefore I say it's haram, so therefore I am a scholar, I'm mujtahid. Now that's different. What you have done is not ijtihad, what you have done is not qiyas. They think, oh, what I have done is qiyas. You have not done qiyas, you have not done, qiyas is about the illah of the rule. You have simply applied the rule to a reality. That's for example, we should pray in a place which is pure. Okay, it is not with najasa. So for me to identify a place which is clean, oh, this is clean, we can pray here. It's not ijtihad in the meaning of the Shari'i meaning. Okay, it is something which is simply applying the rule of reality. Okay, so
the rule and
yeah, so we have to, so we quote, or for example, what nullifies the wudu? It is, we know hadath, or something which is discharged from the back or the front nullifies the wudu. So for us to verify somebody is muhdath or somebody who breaks wind, okay, his wudu is broken. That's simply identifying the reality. Has the wind been broken or not? This is the reality of the rule. It's not to do with the reason of the rule. Okay? So we give the quotation of a scholar from Maliki school here, Ash-Shatibi, who is a famous scholar of Usul. He wrote in Al-Muwafaqat about this matter. So he said, these subjects and the likes which we necessitate to define the manas, the reality, must take the evidence about it according to the reality of every incident. Then he says, ijtihad, here he is using the word ijtihad linguistically. Ijtihad could be connected with the verification of the manas, and does not require therefore the knowledge of the aims, the maqasid of the Sharia, nor the knowledge of the Arabic language, nor the those sciences. Meaning this type of ijtihad linguistically, I simply identify reality, don't even need to know Arabic. So therefore that is not the type of ijtihad which is the Shari'i version, which requires all those things. Okay. So this is the final distinction we are talking about in this chapter. So remember, just to summarize, there is what we have discussed. There is a difference between the illah, the reason behind the rule, and the hikmah of the rule. The wisdom, the divine wisdom Allah has revealed behind the rule. So for example, we mentioned Allah said, لَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, fasting leads to taqwa, meaning that is the normal consequence of fasting. Or salah leads you away from fahisha and munkar. That is the normal consequence of salah. Okay? This is not the illah of the rule. So let's just summarize. There is a difference between illah and hikmah. We talked about the sabab. The sabab is the cause of applying the rule. The cause related to maybe time, maybe the sun in the sky, maybe the sighting of the moon. All of these things are the asbab. The sabab of the rule is the cause of applying the rule, not the reason for the rule. So for example, the sabab for the breaking of the fast is what? The time of Maghrib. The time of Maghrib is the time in the day which is the sabab. It's not the illah. So there's a difference between illah and sabab. There is a difference between illah and consequence of the rule. Sometimes we talk about the consequences of rules. So we can say the Islamic economic system versus the Kufr economic system. We can talk about how the economic system in Islam is more stable, and the system of capitalism is very unstable. We are seeing now Merrill Lynch and all these big banks collapsing, okay, and the big finance houses collapsing. So we can talk about in Mu'amalat and Uqubat the consequence of the rule, but that is not the illah of the rule. There is a difference between the illah of the rule and what? Manatul Hukm, the reality of the rule. Not we agree. Whatever agrees with Islam. See, the statement here we're saying, which does not emanate from Islam. If you want to make the statement longer and more comprehensive, we would say, whatever agrees with Islam is non-Islamic, is kufr, and whatever disagrees with Islam is kufr, unless the basis is Islam. So that makes the statement more comprehensive. Unless the meaning is that the basis should emanate from Islam. Okay? For example, I'll give you an example. Somebody does not make niyyah intention to fast, and is not fasting out of a worship to Allah, but abstains from food and water and all the prohibited acts or things that break the fast from Fajr to Maghrib. Do we say that they have fasted? No, why? It agrees with Islam though. What they have done agrees with Islam. Meaning they have fasted and abstained from food, water and all those things. But why their action is rejected? It's because the basis was not Islamic. Right? So this is the meaning. So a Jew, when he stays away from pork, does it mean that Allah will reward him on Day of Judgment? No, because he is staying away from pork because he believes in the Torah. The Torah is invalid as a book. Does it mean that it is Islamic what he is doing? What we can say is that, okay, it's more agreeable to us, and it's because it's not contradicting our Sharia, but it's something which he is not going to be rewarded for. It's something because the reason why he is doing it is a different reason. For example, somebody, he is a very calm person, a non-Muslim, Mother Teresa, okay, she was very nice to certain people. But she is not doing it because of Allah, because of Islam. She is doing it because of her own weird idea of Christianity. So therefore it's not acceptable to Allah. Yes, but she didn't do it. She believed in a God, but she didn't believe in our deen, Islam, exactly, which is the final deen. So therefore it's not acceptable. So meaning the basis of an action must be from Islam. That's what we mean. So it's the same as saying Islamic democracy. Just because some aspect of democracy, elections, agree with Islam, doesn't mean Islamic democracy. Because these are idiomatic terms, they are terms linked to their belief. Or for example, Islamic socialism. In socialism, you should distribute wealth. In Islam, you should also distribute wealth. Doesn't mean Islam is socialism. Islam is Islam. Okay? So So socialism is a different ideology which it's from kufr, it's from non-Islam. Just because something is matched doesn't mean it's Islamic. Okay, so we have to be careful in this. Yeah, you may have heard many statements, they say, oh, the people in the West have so much Islamic behavior. They have, for example, when they queue up, they are so orderly. If you go to the airport here, people are running and jumping over each other in the queue. Okay? If you go to America or Europe, when they are in a queue, it's orderly, and that is Islamic behavior, right? Or see, they have adopted so many things from Islam. That's not true. Why are they orderly? Because they have got an ideological society. The reason why they are orderly in the queue is they know that the person, like for example, in school dinners in the West, when I used to go to school, if you jump the queue, the dinner lady at the end is going to throw you out to get back to the end, because they have an ordered society. It's an ordered society, but not founded on Islam. Just because they have an ordered society doesn't mean it's Islamic. It just means they are ordered society.
It's good in the sense that
yeah, it's productive. We can say it's productive. We don't mean it's Islamic.
but it is good.
Yes.
And we can learn from perhaps the scientific development.
Yeah, that's something because of Islam. Again, we can learn from anything. Allah allows us to learn from anywhere. So to learn the technology from anywhere, the Prophet told us to learn the technology. When he told the Sahaba to go to Yemen to learn the art of making swords, etc. So Islam has obliged or has told us to utilize technology. So that's a different issue. But the point here is about we should not confuse. Okay, our ideology is our ideology. For example, Abu Jahl was a very intelligent man. He was one of the most intelligent men in Makkah. His name was Abu al-Hakam, the father or the one of wisdom. Okay, and we call him Abu Jahl, the father of ignorance. Why? He was very intelligent. It's because he is ignorant, because he did not believe in Islam. Right? And you have to understand, for example, the Arabs, before Islam, they had many customs which they seem, if we look at the Sharia, agreeable to Islam. Meaning they don't contradict. For example, the Arabs were very generous. These are things from Arab custom. If you were to come to their house, they would not allow you to leave without feeding you and being nice to you and so on. They had this custom of honor. Okay? So Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and Al-Walid, they used to be like that. Okay? They were very generous, but they were mushrik. They were doing that not because of Allah, that's because of their forefathers. You see the point here? So we have to understand the basis for action. That's right. I.e., we only follow a tradition if it is Islamic. If the tradition is not Islamic and is not based on Islam, we reject it.
Based on Islam.
Yeah, based on Islam. And even if we follow the tradition, we follow it if something was previously from tradition, and then Islam accepted that, then we follow it according to the Islamic law, not according to what they were following. For example, the way they used to make tawaf around the Kaaba naked, as an example, in the time of Rasulullah before Islam. Doesn't mean we do that. It means we follow the Sharia of Allah. Yeah? So this is the point. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll carry on. The next section is the section about Ijma. Okay. The Ijma al-Ummah. We're talking about that the whole chapter is about sources of Hukum Shari'i not agreed upon by all the ulama, i.e. the areas what we can say, in other words, the non-definitive sources of Sharia. So there are the first four sources of Sharia are definite, they are qat'i, no one disputes them. So the Quran, of course, everyone accepts. The Sunnah, everyone accepts. The Ijma of the Sahaba, everyone accepts. And Qiyas, although we talked about some don't like the terminology of Qiyas, like Ibn Hazm and the Shia, but they accept the concept of Qiyas. In principle, they call it Ijtihad, fair enough. But, so these are the definitive sources. Now we are going into sources of Sharia which are disputed. Okay, they are what we call the additional sources or the speculative sources. The sources which are zanni, which are speculative or not definite. And for example, these sources, the authors of the book and others do not accept them as sources. We say that these sources are weak. Although they are accepted by the scholars, We accept them as they have some basis for them, they have some evidence for them, but the sources, we say that for something to be a source, it should be, what are we talking about? Source of wahi, source of revelation, right? Source of guidance from Allah. So when we are talking about the source of the Sharia, what is the Sharia? The Sharia is the law of Allah. So when we are talking about what should be the source of Sharia, the source should be definite. Yeah? If the source itself is speculative, then everything that comes from the source will be speculative. So it's a strong argument to say that the source of the Sharia must be something qat'i. Okay? So many scholars, even the other scholars in the past, some of them, they only accepted the qat'i sources. They said Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, Sahaba and Qiyas, that's it. Other than that, we don't accept any other sources. Because these are the definite things, we stick to those. Now some scholars, they accepted the indefinite sources because they said that they are evidences that indicate them, and therefore, if there is something that does not contradict, of course, now let's put provisos. Something does not contradict the Quran, or the Sunnah, or Ijma Sahaba, or Qiyas. And when we look to a subject, we find a dalil from these other sources, which do not contradict the first four, then we can accept it. So this is like, for example, the Shafi'is. The Shafi'is, they accept Ijma al-Ummah. Also the Hanafis accept Ijma al-Ummah. The Ijma of the Ummah, or the Malikis, they accept the Ijma of the Mujtahideen, the Ijma of the scholars. Okay? Some they accept the Ra'i of an individual companion as a dalil. So they will say, Ibn Abbas said this is a dalil. Okay? So these things they use as a supplementary, we can say, as an additional evidence or supplementary evidence. So if they are looking into a question and the question has not got a direct answer in Quran or in Sunnah or in Ijma or in Qiyas, they would then look to these other sources. Or sometimes they will look to these other sources, to indicate the hukum, okay, in addition to the Quran and Sunnah. So this is how we should understand the subject that we are going to study. Okay, we're going to go into now each of the main ones. There are more than the ones that are mentioned, but we're going through many of them. Now we have already discussed the concept of Ijma al-Sahaba. Ijma al-Sahaba is something we accept, everyone accepts. Why? Because the Sahaba, as individuals, they could make mistakes. Ijma means consensus. Ijma means the agreement upon something, the consensus upon something. So, when it comes to the Sahaba, we accept that their consensus is a dalil, like Quran and like Sunnah. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal, He has praised them as a group, and He has mentioned that the Quran is protected. Okay, that He is Hafizun. Allah has protected the Quran. So, who is the one who compiled the Quran? It is the Sahaba. So for us to doubt the Ijma of the Sahaba would be doubting the Quran. Therefore, the Ijma of the Sahaba is a dalil. Okay, it's a dalil Shar'i which we accept. However, other than that, now Ijma al-Ummah, there is a concept that some scholars accept. They say if the Ummah consents to something, not the Sahaba, they say the Ummah, the generation of the Muslims, one generation of Muslims, if they accept to something, then that is also a dalil, that is part of the deen, or that is an indication of wahi, indication of the Sharia. Now, how do they justify that? It's not a very strong argument. How do they justify it? They justify it from an ayah of the Quran. This ayah of the Quran which talks about Sabil al-Mu'mineen. Okay? Or Sabil, the Sabil, the way of the believers. Anyone who splits off from the messenger of Allah after the guidance has become clear to them and follows a way other than the Sabil al-Mu'mineen, other than the way of the believers, okay? We shall leave him in the path he has chosen and land in Jahannam, which is what an evil that is. So here, the scholars like Shafi'i, like Al-Ghazali, like even Sarfati, Hanafi Farhad, many scholars actually, they use these evidences and they say that, look, this ayah indicates that we should follow the way of the believers, the way of Ahl Iman. So if the Ummah in one generation, Ahl Iman, the believers, they accept something which obviously cannot contradict Quran or Sunnah or Ijma or Qiyas. If it contradicts, then of course they are wrong. But if they accept something, okay, they accept a practice, okay, therefore that it should be accepted as part of the Sharia. Okay, we cannot go against it. So they will give evidence like that. So they will say, dua after salah, it is accepted by Ijma. Although it was not practiced by Rasulullah. Okay, it was not practiced by Rasulullah, but it was not practiced. Now we can go into the argument whether it was practiced by the Sahaba. There is some evidence to show that some companions individually practiced it, but some people, they will just say, well, it's Ijma. You know, the Ummah has accepted it, so that is fine. Okay, that is not a strong argument. In fact, we can accept the collective dua. We're talking about dua after salah in collective form, not individual form. The collective dua, we can accept it from another dalil actually. Ijma is not the dalil. We can say the hadith. Rasulullah when climbing the mimbar, Jibreel came and recited, mentioned something. May Allah distance the one who witnesses Ramadan and does not have his sins forgiven. Say Ameen. So I said Ameen. This is a dalil for collective dua. Because Jibreel is repeating something and telling the Prophet to say Ameen. Okay, so that's the dalil actually. But other people, they don't use that as they will use Ijma as a dalil, as an example. So, Ijma al-Ummah, this is an example of how people utilize it. Now, let's carry on. That the following the path of the believers in this ayah, first of all, the meaning of this point is not qat'i. Okay? The meaning of following the sabil of the believers does not necessarily mean the ijma. That's a dhanni interpretation, that's a speculative opinion. In fact, this ayah was revealed after the apostasy of someone. Okay? So following the way of believers, in fact, the stronger opinion, it is to do with following Iman. It's about Iman, not about, following the actions. In action, Sharia. It's saying following Iman, i.e. the way of the mu'mineen, i.e. the way of following the believers, meaning the people who believe in Islam. Okay? But that is not the only dalil they use. They also use other dalils. For example, they use the hadith, many hadith actually. So they say, my ummah, they will not be around or agree upon dalala. Dalala here means misguidance. They say, see, the Prophet is saying, my ummah will never agree upon misguidance. They use another hadith, although that hadith is da'if, some of them use it. They say, my ummah will not agree upon a khata. Khata means mistake here, something mistaken. But that hadith is da'if, so it's not a strong one to use. We never accept it. The other hadith here, similar. I beseech Allah Almighty not to bring my ummah upon the points or agree upon dalala. He granted me this. Okay. Sometimes they use the hadith about Ta'ifa al-Mansura also. La tazal ta'ifat ummati qa'imat ala amrullah. They will always be a group on my ummah who will stand upon the truth, who will remain upon the right path. Okay. So they use these types of evidences to try to say, what they're trying to say is that the ummah as a whole, okay, they will not agree upon misguidance. Therefore, if they agree, they take the opposite meaning. If they agree upon something, that means that thing should be a dalil. Okay? But that is not a strong argument. Because look, dalala, misguidance, means kufr. Doesn't mean things within Islam. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. Okay? What is that? Dalala in Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay, keep us on Sirat al-Mustaqim and away from the Dhalin. Who are the Dhalin? The misguided. This is about belief. Misguided are who? The kuffar. Okay. So here the issue of dalala is saying, the Prophet is saying, my ummah will never as a whole apostate from Islam. That's what the Prophet is saying. That as a whole, the ummah will not agree upon something which is kufr and apostate from Islam by doing it. That is true. That never happened. There has never been in history that the whole generation of Muslims apostates from Islam. That never occurred. What has occurred is some groups, some individuals, some here and there. But the whole of the Muslims has never done that. And they will never do that until Yawm al-Qiyamah. These evidences conflict with other evidences. Okay, first of all, they are khabar ahad, they are not mutawatir. Secondly, which we have studied, we will not get back into that, meaning they are not definite, basically, these hadith in the first place. Secondly, they conflict with other sahih hadith. The other hadith, they will say that the ummah will become misguided, in action, not in belief. So, for example, the hadith says, the best of my ummah, خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. That the best of the ummah is those who lived in my lifetime, then the one after, then the one after that. Then he continued, the narrator said, I don't remember whether there's 2 generations or 3, but anyway. Then will come after a time when people will fabricate stories or tales without evidence, and will cheat and will not be trustworthy, nor be faithful, and they will appear abuse. So the Prophet is condemning. And the Prophet says in many, actually this is one example, but one says that here, lying will become commonplace. The believer will be called the unbeliever. And the one who has true iman, he will be called the kafir. Like today, the ones who be true iman, they are called the terrorists. They are called, you are the extremists, you are the non-Muslims, you are the ones who gone outside of Islam. And the people who give false testimonies and will testify before being asked, and some people will become like wolves. So the Prophet is talking about corruption will appear in this ummah. He is saying corruption will appear. In the other hadith, he is saying that the truthful will be distrusted and the liars will be trusted. Like today, we are telling the truth, but people say, oh, you people are creating fitna, you're talking about Islam. And the liars, i.e. the ones who are the rulers of the Muslims and the government scholars, they will be trusted by the people. And the Prophet says, at that time the Ruwaybida will speak. And the Sahaba asked, who are the Ruwaybida? He said, these who become the leaders, and they are the foolish men, basically. They become the leaders of Islam. So here, all these evidences, they show a conflict actually, that the ummah will be like today. The majority of the ummah, in the a'mal, not in belief, in a'mal, are corrupt. Isn't it? So how can we say the ijma, that the ummah will be in the ijma, it will be good? How can we say the ijma of the ummah? That's the first problem with the idea. The second problem is the ijma of the ummah is impossible. What do you mean ijma of ummah? Ijma means consensus. Means how can you get absolute consensus? You will never get it. It's an impossible idea. It's impractical anyway. Okay? Exactly, but they are extending the idea. They are saying that the ijma of the generation of the companions is the ijma of the tabi'in. The ijma of a generation of the ummah. So they say we take the ijma of the sahaba, we take the ijma of the tabi'in, we take the ijma of the tabi'in, and we take the ijma of any Muslim as a generation. So it's a weird idea actually, it's an impractical idea. We can understand why the scholars in their time, they allowed it, because they were living in time, most of those scholars of the tabi'in or tabi'in, and the people were good. In that time, the people were good, and the people were not corrupt. So they could say, yes, the ijma of the people today is good, because they can see the Muslims today follow Islam, they follow Dalil, and they are not going to... Exactly, so the scholars who allowed this, they were saying they could understand that in their time people are making ijma upon what? They are making ijma upon good things. They are not making ijma upon batil, upon wrong things. So that's why, but anyway, that's why they put the proviso that if the ummah contradicts dalil, then follow dalil. They are saying this is an additional evidence where dalil has not directly indicated. Exactly. How can the consent and the ijma of the people be a dalil? So it's not a strong argument actually. It's something And even if we were to apply it, in what case are we going to apply it? We're going to apply it within the mubah, within the area where Islam has already permitted. It can't be in the matters where Islam has forbidden by dalil already something. Isn't it? So unfortunately today, just for your benefit, the modernist camp, the corrupt scholars, the government scholars, they use and misuse and abuse the idea of ijma for their own benefit. So they said it is ijma al-ummah today to have more than one Muslim country. It's ijma al-ummah, the whole ummah has accepted. Although it's haram in dalil, in Quran and Sunnah. Okay? So ijma, even the scholars like Ash-Shafi'i, they said no, Ash-Shafi'i says ijma, Al-Ghazali says ijma, Abu Hanifa says ijma. So what? They are saying ijma when it does not contradict Quran and Sunnah. You are talking about ijma when it contradicts Quran and Sunnah. Allah said, وَأَعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, and hold fast to the rope of Allah, do not be divided. The Prophet says, إِذَا بُؤِيَتِ خَلِيفَتَيْنِ فَاقْتُلُوا آخِرَ مِنْهُمَا. If your pledge of allegiance is given to two khulafa, kill the latter of them. So Allah has prohibited disunity in the ummah. The Prophet said, we are one ummah and we are one bilad. One ummah wahid, biladun wahid. So how can we divide the Muslims? So they're using ijma. So that's why we have to understand Usul-ul-Fiqh. i.e. they are misusing principles which the scholars mention in limited context and then using it to abrogate the existing sharia. So they say ijma of the scholars. That's the next point we're going to go. Ijma al-mujtahideen. Oh, the scholars today, which scholars? The corrupt scholars. They have consented to accepting the rulers. This is not what the old scholars like Malik and like others accepted ijma, or the scholars they accept ijma al-mujtahideen. Ijma al-mujtahideen, they are saying in the areas where, again, it's not qat'i, it's not definitive. Okay?
But as you said, the first ayat is the An-Nisa Surah.
Yes.
It's very clear that anyone who flips off from the messenger, criteria has been told like the messenger and the guidance of Islam. So after them comes the other than the believers.
No, but they are using the language. They're not just saying, well, in the first part, they're saying, it says, why does it say, Sabil al-Mu'mineen, the way of the believers? So they're saying the way of the believers indicates something. So it's mentioning not only, why doesn't Allah just mention the Rasul and that's it? Why is it saying the path of the believers? So because it's mentioning the path of the believers, it indicates that the Ummah has a particular path, the way. And that's further supported by the evidences. That's further supported, for example, Ghazali and others. They put many ayat. كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. You are the best ummah raised forward for mankind. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةٌ وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. And you are the ummah in equilibrium. You are the balanced or the just ummah. Okay? So Allah has emphasized about the ummah as a whole. So they use all these evidence to say, therefore the path of the ummah is what is indicated. And therefore the path of the believers means not only iman, but means in other things, in actions also. So if the ummah has consented to something, that also indicates an evidence.
But again, the path of the believers, the action of the believers, based upon what?
Yes, based upon Islam, but they would say yes, it's based upon Islam. But they can, for example, through ijma, some of them, they use ijma as a supportive evidence for their argument. Okay? So for example, they may give a dalil from Kitab and Sunnah, but then they will give ijma. Okay? For example, they will say beard. Okay? It is the ijma of Tabi'in. All of the scholars of Tabi'in, they had the beard. So it's ijma. So they use it as a supportive argument. So they would use dalil from Sunnah, but they also use ijma as supportive. But we are saying ijma cannot be used as supportive here anyway, because the ijma has no validity. So what if Tabi'in all had the beard? This doesn't matter. In origin, is the dalil of beard qat'i or not? So sometimes they use, the only practical uses of ijma normally, if we study the history of ijma, is that they use it to support their argument. So scholars, they say, through Quran and through Sunnah and through ijma. Yeah, not only ijma sahaba, ijma of the ummah, or ijma of mujtahideen, they also give. For example, I'll give you an example. A different type of ijma is the ijma of the people of Medina. So for example, the scholars who say that the niqab is fard, that the wearing of the veil for the woman is fard, they use ijma of the people of Medina. The people of Medina in their time used to all cover the face. The ijma of the people of Medina. and therefore that is valid. And they give another argument for people of Medina. We're going to go into that, which is the dalil about Medina itself. So there are various forms of ijma which they use as a supplementary evidence to their argument. No, the issue is that we have to understand deeply. Why do you follow ijma as Sahaba? That's the root of the issue. We follow ijma as Sahaba.
I can understand ijma as Sahaba.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Beyond that,
but they are trying to argue based on evidence. But the argument is weak. Yes, we can understand. But they are saying, look, for example, Ijma al-Mujtahideen, they use, the similar dalil to Ijma al-Ummah. They say, some of them say they restrict it. Say, okay, and this one makes more sense. This one makes more sense. They say the Ummah, yes, the Ummah could be ignorant. But the Mujtahid, the one who is recognized as a Mujtahid, if they make ijma upon something, either ijma of the scholars, if the scholars recognize something, and all of the scholars in history, all of them, have said the same thing, surely it's an evidence. Because the scholars are scholars, they're not going away from the deen. Al-ulama warathatul anbiya, the scholars are the inheritors of the Prophet. Okay?
Between the scholars, there are differences of opinion.
Yes, I know, but say so they don't differ on something. Then,
so do you agree with it? We can go with each
no, I'm giving you their argument first, right? Just to show you that you can understand it should have dalil. It's an argument based on something. It's not just made up. It's not just so simplistic. They just made it up. These are great scholars themselves who argue these points. So they did not just invent it and say, it's a shot in the dark. No, they have an argument. Their argument is, look, the scholars, how can they all go astray? They are the inheritors of the Prophet. If they are all mujtahids and we recognize them as mujtahids, if they unanimously say something, then surely it's an indication. So in order to nullify someone's opinion, someone may come with an opinion. They will say this goes against ijma al-mujtahideen. We reject it. See the issue. So somebody may come out with opinion today that is new. Okay? And they will say we reject it. So that argument it makes more sense. Okay, but still we go to the root of the matter. We say, look, the mujtahideen are making ijtihad. The qat'i matters of the deen are already decided by the Quran and Sunnah. Ijtihad are in the speculative matters. So if ijtihad is allowed in a matter, and just because all the mujtahids have made the same ijtihad in the matter, doesn't mean that is a dalil just because they unified on that. If it is allowed to make ijtihad in it, and if there is another dalil that comes, and even if it is one scholar against the ijma, if it has got a dalil, then he has a dalil, as long as the ijtihad is valid. For example, Malik's opinion about praying with your hands at the side contradicts everyone's view. Okay? Abu Hanifa's view, that for example, sometimes people try to refute us, that say the Khalifa should be from Quraysh. It's ijma al-mujtahid. Apart from one or two mujtahids in history that said Khalifa does not need to be from Quraysh. It's Imam Baqilani, Imam al-Juwayni. That's it. Everyone. No, they say it's recommended only. So they say it's ijma of Ahlul Sunnah. It's ijma of the Hanafis and the Malikis and the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis and everyone. That the Khalifa must be from Quraysh. This is the ijma of the mujtahideen in history. Okay? That's true. But that doesn't mean it's the strongest argument. It's still ijtihad. So the view, if we study it, which is stronger, is the view of Baqilani and Juwayni, and the view that I follow, that is the Khalifa to be from Quraysh is recommended, not obligatory. Because if we study the dalil deeply, we will see that issue. So what if historically the mujtahideen, they had the same view? Doesn't mean that itself is wahi. So what if men? You can say the Sahaba, yes, because we have the need for that.
Again, Rasulullah said the Khalifa is from Quraysh.
Yeah, but that is an argument now of dalil. So what? Did he say it as a recommended, or did he say it obligatory? The Prophet's action contradicts the hadith. The Prophet appointed rulers who were governors, who were not from Quraysh.
The point over here is not the governors, it's the Khalif we are talking about.
No, it doesn't say it's the Khalif from Quraysh. He says, Inna hadha al-amr. Verily this matter, the matter of ruling, will be from Quraysh. So not only the issue of Khalifa. So the Prophet is talking about ruling, and then at the same time he said, obey the Imam, even if he is an Abyssinian state.
Perhaps the Prophet is also talking about the people who migrated from Mecca to Medina.
No, I'm not going to go into the argument now, otherwise we get into a sub-argument. It's not because of that. The Prophet did indicate a recommendation. Okay, for example, he said, this matter will be in Quraysh even if two of them are alive. Okay, so here the Prophet is emphasizing that the Quraysh should be the rulers, but he is not making it obligatory. Why? Because he said also to Banu Amr bin Sa'sa, Allah will give authority to whomever he wills. Also he appointed rulers who are non-Arab, non-Qurayshi. Also he, when we study the language, it's a deep matter. If we study it, the Quraysh is the laqab, is the name. The scholars who try to argue that it must be from Quraysh, they are using a principle called mafhum al-mukhalafa, the opposite understanding. And opposite understanding is not applicable in usul for names. For example, if I said, today I met Zayd, doesn't mean that I only met Zayd. It means I met Zayd, but if I say, lash them 100 times, it means lash them only 100 times, not 99, not 50, not 101. So mafhum mukhalafa is applicable in others, in numbers, but not in ism and laqab, not in names. These are deep matters in usul. But anyway, I just want to give you the point here, that how people may use ijma al-mujtahideen. They may use it to say that it is the ijma of the mujtahideen for this opinion, but it doesn't matter. That opinion is still an opinion at the end of the day. Right? So sometimes they use it as a supportive thing like that. Now, the other argument is the argument of the Shia, of the Jafaris and the Zaydis. They say the Ijma Ahl al-Bayt. Okay? We are not going to talk about the argument of the Shia, we're not going to go too much into those arguments which are totally invalid. We're going to give the arguments which they use which are based on dalil. Like some of their arguments just based on logic, they have no evidence. But this one is based on some evidence. So they quote the ayah from Quran which says, Ya Nisa al-Nabi, O wives of the Prophet. Okay? Allah wishes to cleanse the people of the house of the Prophet. Okay, so Allah has mentioned the house of the Prophet, Ahlul Bayt. Okay, He wishes to cleanse them of impurities, of rijs. Okay, now the people from the Shia, they say that look, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam covered his household. He covered Ali, Hussein, Hassan, Fatima, and said, these, O Allah, these are my household, or members of my household. These are Ahlul Bayt. So they have backed this from the Sunnah. Also, the Prophet said in another hadith, I am leaving amongst you two valuable things, the book of Allah and my usra, my family. So they use these types of evidences. Basically, they try to say that these evidences indicate that Ahlul Bayt, they are cleansed by Allah from impurity. Therefore, the ijma of Ahlul Bayt is what is indication of the wahi. Okay? So this is the argument they use. Now the problem is here. First of all, the meaning of the verse is speculative, it's not qat'i, not definite. Okay? The verse's meaning is not necessarily that. Actually, the stronger meaning of the verse is that when Allah said He has lifted a rijs from the family of the Prophet, and a rijs means mistake, according to their argument. Ahlul Bayt therefore are infallible, that's what they say. And thus the ijma is a legitimate source of sharia. In response to the ayah in Surah Al-Ahzab, the meaning is not qat'i. Also the ayah was revealed in regards to the wives of the Prophet as well. So it starts with says, Ya Nisa al-Nabi. But the Shia do not accept all the wives of the Prophet as infallible. They say only the lineage of Ali. Okay? So their argument is contradictory. If you want to say Ahlul Bayt, you have to accept Aisha. You have to accept, and they attack Aisha. Okay? They say no, they accept only the Ahlul Bayt Ali and Fatima and the lineage of Hassan and Hussein. Why you rejecting all the other wives of the Prophet? Okay, so the argument is contradictory first. Secondly, it is not exclusive, we say, to Fatima or Hassan, Ali, the mother of Hassan and their sons. Does it not mean all the wives are infallible? Also, should the word rijis is used in the Quran in different contexts. The word rijis is mushtarak. It can have different meanings in Arabic. The word rijis has been mentioned in many ayat under the meaning of moral impurity. So here Allah has used in Surah Al-An'am that thus Allah lays rijis, shame, upon those who believe not. Okay? So here Allah is using the term rijis to mean shame or to mean something in a negative context. Also here, another verse, that it is not for any soul to believe except by the permission of Allah. He has set the rijis, uncleanliness, upon those who have no sense. So rijis in these and many other places in Quranic text denotes moral impurity. Removing the rijis does not in any way mean that they are infallible. It means that Allah is protecting them from things like slander and moral impurity. Okay? It doesn't mean that Allah is making them infallible. So they try to denote that this is an indication that these people are infallible somehow, or they are protected by Allah, they cannot commit sin. And that is not a valid view actually. Because also that contradicts the whole concept of infallibility when we go later on. If we want to go deeper, infallibility is only for the Anbiya. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal, He reveals the deen through the Anbiya. And if they were not infallible, the deen would be doubtful. Okay? If Rasulullah was not infallible, meaning if it was possible for him to commit a sin, it was possible for him to commit a mistake, then the whole of the deen would be in doubt. It could be that he has lied about the revelation. It could be that he has just made things up. But that's impossible. The fact that we prove the Quran proves the messengership of the Prophet, and it proves his infallibility. Now, to extend infallibility means the ability, somebody cannot commit a sin. The Shia believe Ahlul Bayt are infallible, and thus they have the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, from Ahlul Bayt like Muhammad al-Baqir, Jafar al-Sadiq, Al-Hassan al-Hussein, all the other Imams. They say they are infallible, they cannot commit sin. Therefore, whatever they say is daleel. The qawl of the Imam is daleel for the Shia. This argument is batil, it's invalid, it doesn't even have shubha daleel, because it contradicts the concept of infallibility. Infallibility is only for the Anbiya, not to anyone else. These ayat cannot be used for infallibility. Infallibility means that the inability to commit sin. The inability. Now, human beings can commit sin. Even the Sahaba could commit sin. So, you can't prove infallibility like this. It's not a valid argument. As for the hadith which narrated in page 112, that the Prophet covered with his clothes Ali, Fatima, Hussein, Hassan, and said, these are my family. It is by no means an indication that Ahlul Bayt is solely limited to them. There was in the ayah of Surah Ahzab mean the wives of the Prophet as well. Also, the hadith of Saqalain, meaning the family of the Prophet. Hussein said to Zayd in a narration, O Zayd, who are his family? Are they not his wives? And he said, yes, they are his wives and are his family. But his family are those who have been excluded from accepting the sadaqah, accepting the charity. So anyone from Ahlul Bayt doesn't necessarily mean the one from the lineage of Ali. And they asked Zayd, who are they? He said, they are the family of Ali, they are the family of Aqil and the family of Jafar. So Hussein then asked, have all these people been excluded from paying Zadaqah and Jizya? So meaning the family of the Prophet is wide anyway. Not only from the lineage one side of Ali, it's from the wider lineage. Also, there is another hadith, the Prophet also said, Salman al-Farsi, he is from Ahlul Bayt, because people used to criticize him, saying that he is Farsi, he is Persian, this and that. So the Prophet said, he is from my family. He is from Ahlul Bayt. Also, right, Salman al-Farsi, because the Prophet sort of adopted him as part of his family because of that, because he was a foreigner. So this thing again is not a clear matter. that they are trying to indicate. Okay, and the meaning of the hadith saying I've left two things, my family, it just means that yes, it is part to honor the family of the Prophet. That's true. There are many hadith about Ahlul Bayt. We should honor the bloodline of the Prophet. We should not give them, they are not allowed to take sadaqah. These are true things. So that's why in India they have the Sayyid. The Sayyid is the family of the Prophet. So it's true, it's part to honor them. Because they are from the bloodline of Rasulullah. And Rasulullah is a special person. He's not just any human being. A special person. We should honor his bloodline. We should respect them. Of course, it doesn't mean they can't commit haram. They can commit haram. Many of the Sayyids are corrupt today. But the issue is still, again, we can't give them sadaqah, and these rules, they still apply. So these are just the rules. Doesn't necessarily mean that whatever they say is the law of Allah. They can do things against the law of Allah. Yes.
This one, the whole voice of Prophet Allah is saying, over to the hadith, hadith do not mean
no, they are all khabar ahad.
When it comes to that, how can we, based on a khabar ahad, how we can just...
No, but the argument is deeper than that. To follow khabar ahad in a'mal is fard. Okay, so when it comes to most of the text about salah, about the details of any of the rules, they are all khabar ahad. But we follow them, don't we? We are obliged to follow them. It is mutawatir as a concept that Rasulullah sent individuals to teach people the deen. So to follow khabar ahad in a'mal, in aqidah we can't, because aqidah is doubtful. But in action, we are obliged to follow khabar ahad. So these scholars are saying, so if we are obliged to follow it, the Sharia is about action. So what? So therefore, even if they're from khabar ahad, even if it's the zanni source, we can still follow it. Right? It's a deeper argument to say that, well, we are not talking about individual actions, we are talking about the source of revelation. We are talking about wahi, because the source of Sharia essentially is trying to identify what is wahi. What is something which is from Allah. The Sunnah is from Allah. The Quran is from Allah. Ijma Sahaba is an indication of the Sunnah, therefore it's from Allah. Qiyas is from the Kitab and Sunnah, therefore it's from Allah. Now beyond that, how are you going to say things from men? Ijma of him or him or him, that they are from Allah. You need to prove the source actually should be qat'i. So that's a deeper argument. Okay, but they use the argument that in a'mal we follow khabar ahad, therefore in usul we can also follow khabar ahad. No, that's what their argument. So it's ikhtilaf. We say that our opinion is that you can't.
But again, the ayat and the hadith, bridging them is totally it's not something wherein the Rasulullah says, all these are the rules of the Rasul, like covering Ali and the ayat says white.
Yeah. But they say, well, this indicates that. You see the point that they realize it's not qat'i thing. They realize it's not definitive. They say this is our opinion. That it indicates that the ijma of Ahlul Bayt is the valid ijma. If it is simply ijma Ahlul Bayt, that on its own is shubha dalil. That's a valid argument, like the Zaydis. The Zaydis do not accept the concept of infallibility. The Zaydis and the other Ithna Ashariya, the 12 Imami Shia, they are different. That's why some scholars say the Zaydis are the fifth school of Ahl Sunnah. Meaning they are the same as the Sunnis, apart from the fact that they have some political difference. They say Ali should have been the Khalif after the Prophet. But they don't say Ali is infallible. They don't say the Imams are infallible. They just say that's her preference. They accept all the Sahaba, they accept the Hadith books of the Sunni. For example, Imam Shawkani used to be Zaydi. Okay, then he just developed his own ijtihad. So Zaydis, they may accept Ijma' Ahlul Bayt, but they don't say that the issue of infallibility, that the Imams are infallible. They simply give a preference to them. They reject infallibility. Therefore they are, better. The 12 Imami Shia, they accept that infallibility, that's an invalid concept. That's not even an acceptable concept. Therefore, they are sinful for that. Okay? Because they are adding something to the deen. They are saying the Imams are infallible. So Jafar al-Sadiq, whatever he does cannot be a mistake. It is from Allah, or it's guided by Allah. That's an invention. Therefore, we can say it's a bid'ah. It's not something which It's from clear dalil.
How do you say that the Sahih people have named Sahih are the family of Muslim proof? Hassan and Sahih, a lot of stuff.
If they have proof, meaning some people have lineage. For example, in the old times, in the time of the Mughals, people used to keep the records of their family until the time of the Prophet. It was an honor. So they used to have, even my family, one of my brothers tried to do some research, is that in the old records, my family name is linked back. They say we originate from Iraq. Okay, so you can trace with the records, because my family are landowners. The landowners used to have their lineage recorded because of inheritance. Okay, they used to say we are the sons of Fulan, of Fulan, of Fulan, of Fulan. So in the old times, you can, for example, the Nizams of Hyderabad, you can trace their lineage until the time of the Prophet. Okay, people's lineage, many of them, you could trace it back. They would go back and go back and go back until somebody is converted, or unless it's from so the Sayyid from the time of the Mughals was acceptable. Now people have self-proclaimed Sayyids. Okay? Some people just proclaim themselves, but if they have a lineage which is provable, then we have to accept it. Yeah. Yeah. No, they will say that that is restricted to Ahlul Bayt. Because the Quran does not specify who. So the Quran says, Radullah wa Radu'ani, Allah is pleased with them, they are pleased with him, but doesn't mention who they are. They will say, yeah, that's Ali and Hassan and Hussein and Fatima. So they specify Ijma Sahaba to Ijma Ahlul Bayt. Yeah? They will reject. The problem with the Shia is that they reject any hadith of the Sunni. They accept their own books of hadith. Unless a narration has come from their Imam, they reject it. So that's the problem. So all the hadith you quote, they will say, yeah, but that's from your book. We don't accept them anyway. See the problem? Yeah? So that's the Isna Ashari. That's why the Shia, the 12 Imam Shia, they are sinful. Because they are rejecting authentic hadith. Okay, which are narrated by authentic people. How can you just reject them all of a sudden? No, it's not out of the fold of Islam, because to reject qat'i definitive things which are absolutely definite by established tawatur and absolute is something which would go outside the fold of Islam. Okay, so they are saying that no, they are saying okay, yeah, we don't accept Abu Bakr and Umar. Okay, now to accept Abu Bakr and Umar, they will, to reject them is not apostasy itself, because some. No, they use their own books, Kanzul Amal and so on. So they don't reject hadith. They don't reject hadith. They collected their own hadith. So the scholars of the Shia, the Imams, are the ones who compile the hadith. So they have their own books of hadith. So they don't accept from us, because they say it started from them doubting upon Abu Bakr and Umar and so on. They say that therefore we're not going to accept anyone who was pro them. Anyone who is pro Ahlul Bayt we accept. So they accepted the narrators pro Ahlul Bayt. Non-pro Ahlul Bayt they rejected. So they say Ali was unhappy with Abu Bakr being Khalifa, which is true, because Ali was not included in the process, but Ali accepted him as a Khalifa, did not rebel. So they use all those things and go deeper into that and say, therefore Abu Bakr manipulated the bay'ah, Umar manipulated the bay'ah, it should have been Ali was the chosen one, this and that and this and that. So they go into their own whole thing. The Prophet did not choose Abu Bakr as the Khalifa. The Prophet chose Abu Bakr to lead the Salah. So they will say, fair enough, he should have just led the Salah. The Prophet has said in a hadith, even according to the hadith, he says, Ali is al-Mawla, he is the protector. So the Prophet has indicated Ali. So they will mention all the hadith praising Ali and say, look, therefore Ali is the one. And the problem is that they have got this thing for bloodline. They're saying the Prophet didn't have a son, or the son Ibrahim died. So who is the blood of the Prophet? Yeah? who is the closest living relative of the Prophet, who is linked to the blood of the Prophet? It is Ali. And who will protect the Quran? So they go into a deep argument which is based on logic. So they say that Quran, Allah has said He has protected. Who is going to protect the Quran? For the Quran not to be corrupted, there needs to be a protector. So there must be a living protector. The Quran cannot just be theoretically protected by Allah. There needs to be a physical protection of Quran. Who is that? Huh?
How do you say that it's
the rulers? They will say no. Who? The Muslims?
Why you want to get into that argument? First of all, how do you say that it's a theoretical protector?
I know, I'm not saying that their arguments are right. I'm just showing you what their arguments are. That they have arguments there, but they are false. Okay? That argument is based on logic. That Allah is the protector, now that's His knowledge how He protects it. So what? And the hadith which says Ali is Mawla, even if we accept that it is authentic, first of all it's doubted in authenticity. But anyway, even if we accept it, the term Mawla in Arabic language has over 30 meanings. None of them mean inheritor. It means protector of my family. When did the Prophet say it? He said when he went going for the battle. He said Ali is the protector of my family. That's what he's saying. Okay? So that is not saying Ali is the protector of the Ummah or the Khalifa or whatever. So anyway, they try to go into logic. They say the Prophet, he must have indicated someone after him. How can you say he did not indicate? He must have. Yeah? So all those things and so on. So they manipulate many things. So Shia, that's how they got into problems actually. The Shia, the 12 Imami Shia, they got into sin. We can't go say they're outside of Islam. They accept Quran, they accept Hadith, but they just got into bid'ah, innovation, like the infallibility of the Imams. So we say they are sinful. Unless they adopt something like the ones who say no, like the Boharas, that the Quran is not true. There is only the Imam knows the Quran. This is the incomplete Quran. That's kufr, of course. And the ones like the Nusayri Alawis, like the rulers of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, they say Ali is God. Okay, and He's the manifestation of Allah. So that's kufr, of course. So some of the Shia, like some of the Sunnis, they went into disbelief. But the ones who we accept as Muslim, they are just sinful. It's the ones who are Imami. The ones who are Zaydi, even they are not even sinful. They are okay. They're just like us, they just have difference in usul. Yes, let's stop. Okay, inshallah we'll stop here after down.